The vast obsidian chamber stretched beyond sight, its curved walls reaching up into darkness. Ambassador David Foster stepped through the massive doors, his boots echoing against the polished floor that reflected the light of 1,000 stars. Above him, holographic displays showed the territories of every known civilization in the galaxy, each one pulsing with the colors of their ruling species. The Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime was designed to intimidate. Representatives from over 300 species sat in tiered rows that rose like mountains around the central speaking platform. At the highest level, the Council of Five presided over galactic law with absolute authority. Their species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, maintaining order through careful control of younger civilizations. Foster walked toward the center platform, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon him. Earth's delegation consisted of only 3 humans, while some species brought entire armies of advisors. The message was clear. Humanity was insignificant in the grand scheme of galactic politics. Humans of Earth, announced Arbiter Loxmar, his crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. You stand before the Council to answer for violations of the newcomer protocols. Your species has been detected conducting unauthorized research into forbidden technologies. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of translation devices. Foster could hear whispers in dozens of alien languages, most expressing curiosity about what punishment would be imposed on the primitive humans. Foster stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Honored Arbiter, I believe there has been a misunderstanding about the nature of our research. A ripple of amusement passed through the alien delegates. The idea that humans might correct the Council was absurd. Loxmar's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile. Enlighten us, human. What misunderstanding could there be about gravitational manipulation experiments conducted without Council approval? Foster reached into his jacket and withdrew a small data pad. Several security officers tensed, their various appendages moving toward weapons. But Foster simply held up the device. May I present evidence, Honored Arbiter? Loxmar gestured dismissively. Proceed. Though I doubt your primitive understanding of galactic law will provide adequate justification. The chamber's main display activated, showing footage from what appeared to be a human research facility. Scientists in white coats worked around a large device that hummed with energy. The timestamp showed the recording was from 3 days earlier. This is our gravitational research laboratory on Luna Base, Foster explained. As you can see, we are indeed conducting experiments with gravitational fields. Murmurs of condemnation arose from the delegates. Gravitational manipulation was strictly forbidden to newcomer species. The technology was considered too dangerous for civilizations that had achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. However, Foster continued, his tone remaining perfectly calm, these experiments are not unauthorized. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Loxmar raised one crystalline hand for silence. Explain yourself. No permits have been issued to humanity for such research. Foster smiled slightly. That's correct. No permits have been issued, but none were required. The confusion in the chamber deepened. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand what the human meant. The newcomer protocols clearly state that species with fewer than 500 years of space travel require Council approval for advanced research, Loxmar said, his voice carrying a warning tone. They do indeed, Foster agreed. However, the protocols also contain an exception clause that most species overlook. He activated his data pad again. The display showed a section of galactic law that few beings ever bothered to read. The text was dense and filled with legal terminology, but one paragraph stood out clearly. Exception 42C, Foster read aloud. Advanced research may be conducted without Council oversight if the requesting species can demonstrate prior mastery of the technology in question. The chamber fell completely silent. Every delegate stared at the display, reading and rereading the obscure legal clause. Loxmar's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. Prior mastery? Humans achieved space travel only 300 years ago. You could not possibly have mastered gravitational manipulation before that time. Foster's smile grew wider. Honored Arbiter who said we mastered it after we achieved space travel? The implications of his words hit the chamber like a shockwave. If humans had developed gravitational manipulation before leaving Earth, then they had been hiding their true technological capabilities for centuries. Impossible, breathed Counselor Thekva. her insectoid form clicking with agitation. Our monitoring of Earth showed no signs of advanced technology until your species achieved fusion power. Your monitoring showed exactly what we wanted it to show, Foster replied calmly. Nothing more, nothing less. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. If humanity had been capable of hiding their technology from galactic surveillance, what else had they concealed? Arbiter Loxmar stood, his crystalline form now glowing with alarm. You are claiming that humanity has possessed advanced technology for longer than your official space program? Foster nodded. Much longer. The gravitational experiments you observed are actually quite primitive compared to our operational systems. We've been using gravity manipulation for industrial purposes for over a century. He activated his datapad once more. The display showed new footage, this time from what appeared to be underground facilities on Earth. Massive machines moved materials without any visible means of support. Workers operated in environments where gravity seemed to flow like water, allowing them to work in 3 dimensions without difficulty. Our mining operations in the Earth's core have been using gravitational fields to extract rare materials for decades, Foster explained. Our cities use gravity manipulation for transportation and construction. Even our agricultural systems employ controlled gravitational environments to increase crop yields. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council chamber. An entire civilization had been living with technology that the Galactic Council considered extremely dangerous, and they had been doing so in complete secrecy. Why? Loxmar's voice was barely a whisper. Why hide such capabilities? Foster's expression grew serious. Because we learned something important when we first detected galactic civilization, honored Arbiter. We learned that admitting to advanced capabilities often results in restrictions, limitations, and oversight by species who may not understand our intentions. He gestured toward the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber has had their technological development monitored and controlled by the Council. Their expansion limited, their research directed, their military capabilities restricted. We observed this pattern and decided to avoid it. By lying about your technological level, Counselor Vexil accused, his reptilian features twisted with anger. By maintaining our privacy, Foster corrected, galactic law does not require species to reveal all their capabilities upon contact. It only requires compliance with specific protocols and restrictions. He activated his datapad again, showing another section of galactic law. Article 15 of the Contact Protocol specifically states that species are entitled to maintain technological and military secrets, as long as they do not pose a threat to galactic security. The legal text appeared on the display, confirming Foster's words. The chamber fell into stunned silence as delegates realized that humanity had been operating within galactic law the entire time. The question now, Foster continued, is whether the Council wishes to continue operating under the assumption that humanity requires oversight and guidance, or whether you're prepared to acknowledge that we are a fully autonomous civilization capable of managing our own affairs. Loxmar's crystalline form flickered with confusion and concern. What are you proposing? Foster straightened his jacket and met the gaze of every major delegate in the chamber. I'm proposing that the Council update its understanding of humanity's position in galactic civilization. We're not newcomers seeking guidance. We're an established civilization that has chosen to interact with galactic society on our own terms. And if we refuse to acknowledge this, reclassification? Counselor Thekva asked, though her tone suggested she already feared the answer. Foster's smile returned, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. Then you'll continue to make decisions about humanity based on incomplete information, just as you have been doing for the past 3 centuries. He turned and began walking toward the chamber's exit, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. The only difference is that now you know the information is incomplete. The massive doors groaned open, and David Foster walked out, leaving behind a chamber full of aliens who were just beginning to realize that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been carefully crafted to hide a much larger truth. And somewhere deep beneath the Earth's surface, gravitational manipulation systems that had been running for over a century continued their work, powering a civilization that had never needed permission to advance beyond the limitations others tried to impose upon them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 12 hours after Ambassador Foster's revelation. The crystalline chamber buzzed with urgent conversations in hundreds of languages as delegates tried to process what they had learned. Emergency protocols had been activated across the galaxy, with intelligence services working frantically to reassess their data on human capabilities. Arbiter Loxmar's crystalline form flickered with patterns of stress as he called the session to order. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by visible uncertainty. Around the chamber, security had been tripled, though many wondered what good conventional security would do against a species that had been hiding advanced technology for centuries. "The Council has reviewed the evidence presented by the human delegation," Loxmar announced, his voice carrying a tremor that hadn't been there before. "We have also conducted emergency consultations with our intelligence services across 17 sectors." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing data streams from various monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Red warning indicators blinked continuously, signaling the complete failure of surveillance systems that had been trusted for millennia. "The results are disturbing," Loxmar continued. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected gravitational anomalies around Earth that extend back over 200 years. Anomalies that were previously classified as natural phenomena." Counselor Thekva's insectoid form clicked with agitation. "You're saying they've been using this technology in space for 2 centuries? "Not just using it," interrupted a new voice. The chamber doors had opened to admit a figure that made several delegates gasp in recognition. Director Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Authority walked into the chamber with the same confident stride that Foster had displayed. But there was something different about her presence. She carried herself like someone accustomed to command, not diplomacy. "Director Vasquez," Loxmar said carefully, "your presence was not requested for this session." Vasquez smiled as she approached the central platform. "I thought it was time the Council met someone from our actual government, rather than just our diplomatic corps." The implications hung heavy in the chamber. If Foster was merely a diplomat, what kind of authority did this woman represent? "Ambassador Foster showed you our research capabilities," Vasquez continued conversationally. "I'm here to show you our operational capabilities." She activated a device on her wrist and the chamber's main display shifted to show real-time images from space. What the delegates saw made many of them rise from their seats in alarm. Massive structures hung in the void around Earth, each one larger than the biggest Council space stations. But these weren't the primitive orbital facilities that human diplomats had shown the Council during first contact. These were clearly advanced installations with technology that defied easy classification. 16 major orbital facilities, Vasquez announced calmly, each one equipped with gravitational manipulation systems that allow us to move objects the size of asteroids with minimal energy expenditure. She gestured, and the view zoomed in on one of the structures. Beings could be seen working in open space without protective suits, surrounded by controlled gravitational fields that provided both atmosphere and protection from radiation. "Our workers don't need environmental suits because we can create localized atmospheric pockets using gravity wells," she explained. "We don't need massive transport ships because we can move cargo by manipulating space-time itself." Counselor Vexel's reptilian features had paled to a sickly green. "How long have these facilities existed?" "The oldest one was constructed about 150 years ago," Vasquez replied. "The newest was completed last month. We've been expanding our orbital infrastructure continuously, though we've kept it hidden from your surveillance systems." "Hidden how?" demanded Counselor Mortuck, a massive creature whose species prided itself on advanced sensor technology. Vasquez's smile grew wider. "The same way we hid everything else. We learned early that your monitoring systems look for specific energy signatures and technological patterns. We simply developed technology that doesn't produce those signatures." The display shifted again, showing what appeared to be empty space. But as different sensor readings were overlaid, the massive human installations became visible like ghosts materializing from nothing. "Adaptive stealth technology," Vasquez explained. "Our installations reflect exactly the sensor readings that your monitoring systems expect to see. To your sensors, that region of space appears to contain nothing but cosmic background radiation and trace debris." The chamber erupted in alarmed voices. The ability to hide entire space stations from galactic surveillance represented a complete breakdown of the Council's ability to monitor potential threats. Loxmar raised a crystalline hand for silence. Director Vasquez, are you saying that humanity has been building a secret space-based civilization for over a century? Secret? Vasquez looked genuinely puzzled. There's nothing secret about it. We've been operating in full view of your sensor networks the entire time. The fact that your technology couldn't detect our activities is hardly our responsibility. She activated her wrist device again, and the display showed a comprehensive map of human space. What had appeared to be a small cluster of colonies around Earth was revealed to be a vast network of installations, mining operations, and research facilities spread across dozens of star systems. 43 star systems with permanent human presence, Vasquez announced. 217 major installations. Over 3 million humans living and working in space-based facilities. The numbers hit the Council like a physical blow. According to their records, humanity had fewer than 50,000 people living off-world, all in carefully monitored colonies that required Council approval for expansion. Impossible, breathed Councillor Thekva. Our colonial oversight protocols track all expansion activities. We have detailed records of every human settlement. You have detailed records of every settlement we wanted you to know about, Vasquez corrected. The rest were established using our own resources and technology, without any need for Council oversight or approval. She gestured toward the display, which now showed side-by-side comparisons of official human colonies and the hidden installations. The difference was staggering. The official colonies were small, primitive affairs that barely sustained themselves. The hidden installations were massive industrial complexes that could easily support millions of inhabitants. Why? Loxmar's voice was barely a whisper. Why build a parallel civilization? Vasquez's expression grew serious. Because we learned something important when we first made contact with galactic civilization, Arbiter. We learned that species who reveal their full capabilities often find themselves subjected to restrictions, monitoring, and control that limits their ability to grow and develop. She began walking around the chamber's perimeter, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. Every species in this chamber has had their expansion limited by Council protocols, their technology development guided by Council oversight, their military capabilities restricted by Council security concerns. We observed this pattern and realized that joining galactic civilization officially would mean accepting limitations on our growth that we found unacceptable, she continued. So we developed an alternative approach. By operating outside galactic law, Councillor Vexil accused. By operating within the gaps in galactic law, Vasquez corrected. Everything we've done has been technically legal under Council protocols. We've simply interpreted those protocols more creatively than most species. The display shifted to show sections of galactic law, with specific clauses highlighted. The legal text was dense and complex, but the highlighted sections clearly showed loopholes that could be interpreted to allow much of what humanity had done. Colonial expansion restrictions apply only to planets designated as habitable worlds. Vasquez read from one section. Asteroid mining and space-based construction are specifically exempted from oversight requirements. She gestured toward another highlighted clause. Technology development restrictions apply only to weapons of mass destruction and technologies deemed threatening to galactic security. Gravitational manipulation for industrial purposes falls under either category. The chamber fell into stunned silence as delegates realized that humanity had found legal justifications for everything they had done. They hadn't broken galactic law, they had simply followed it more cleverly than anyone had anticipated. The question now, Vasquez said, returning to the center of the chamber, is what the Council intends to do with this information. Loxmar's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. What do you mean? I mean that you now know the truth about human capabilities and human activities, Vasquez replied. You can either continue pretending that we're a minor species requiring oversight, or you can acknowledge the reality of our position in galactic civilization. And if we choose the former? Councillor Mortok asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. Vasquez shrugged. Then you'll continue making decisions based on incomplete information, just as you have been doing for 3 centuries. The only difference is that The Galactic Council chamber had been transformed into something resembling a war room. Emergency analysis teams worked frantically at holographic displays, while intelligence officers from dozens of species huddled around data streams that grew more disturbing by the hour. What had begun as a simple investigation into human research activities had become a complete reassessment of galactic security. Arbiter Loxmar stood before the main display, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. For 72 hours, the Council's best analysts had been trying to understand the true scope of human activities. What they had discovered defied everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. "The preliminary report is complete," announced Chief Intelligence Coordinator Zethik, her tentacled form rippling with stress patterns. "The situation is far worse than we initially assessed." The chamber fell silent as delegates prepared themselves for revelations that seemed to grow more shocking each day. The display activated, showing a comprehensive map of the galaxy with human presence highlighted in red. Where 3 days ago there had been tiny clusters around Earth, now vast networks of activity stretched across multiple sectors. 112 star systems with confirmed human presence, Zethik announced, her voice trembling slightly. 437 major installations. Estimated population of 15 million humans living in space-based facilities that we never detected. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The numbers represented a complete civilization that had been operating in parallel to galactic society without anyone knowing. But that's not the most concerning discovery, Zethik continued. She gestured and the display zoomed in on specific regions of space. "We've identified 17 installations that appear to be military in nature. Advanced shipyards, weapons testing facilities, and what can only be described as strategic command centers." The implications sent shockwaves through the assembly. A hidden military infrastructure suggested capabilities that went far beyond the industrial and research facilities they had already revealed. Counselor Thekva's insectoid form clicked with agitation. "Military facilities? Are you saying humanity has been building a secret fleet?" "Not building," corrected a new voice. The chamber doors opened to admit a figure that made several security officers reach for their weapons. Admiral Rebecca Torres walked into the chamber wearing a uniform that seemed to absorb light itself. Her presence was unsettling in ways that delegates couldn't quite define. "Admiral Torres," Loxmar said carefully, "your presence was not requested." Torres smiled as she approached the central platform. "I thought it was time the Council met someone from our actual defense forces, rather than just our civilian authorities." She activated a device that caused the air around her to shimmer slightly. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with additional figures, humans in military uniforms who had been completely invisible moments before. "Optical camouflage," Torres explained casually. "We've been observing these proceedings to ensure accurate reporting." The delegates stared in horror at the realization that their most secure chamber had been infiltrated by invisible soldiers for days without detection. "How many?" Loxmar whispered. "How many what?" Torres asked with amusement. "How many soldiers are currently in this chamber? How many ships are in this system? How many operations have we conducted without your knowledge?" She gestured and the main display shifted to show real-time tactical information. The space around Nexus Prime, which moments before had appeared empty except for Council security vessels, now showed dozens of human ships maintaining perfect stealth fields. 37 vessels currently providing security for this facility, Torres announced. "Your own security forces detected none of them." Counselor Vexil's reptilian features had paled to a sickly color. "Security for this facility? You're protecting us?" "Someone has to," Torres replied matter-of-factly. "Your intelligence services have been so focused on monitoring human activities that they've missed several genuine threats to galactic security." The display shifted again, showing intercepted communications and surveillance data. What appeared was evidence of criminal organizations, illegal weapons programs, and even what looked like preparations for major terrorist attacks against Council facilities. The Nexus Liberation Front planned to attack this facility using stolen antimatter weapons, Torres explained. "We intercepted their communications 3 weeks ago and have been tracking their movements since then. The Korthek Piracy Syndicate has been planning to disrupt major shipping lanes using cloaked vessels," added one of the previously invisible soldiers. "We have their entire fleet under surveillance. The Zephyrian separatists have been developing biological weapons designed to target Council leadership," continued another. "We've been monitoring their research, facilities and preparing countermeasures. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices as delegates realized that multiple threats to galactic security had been developing under their noses while their intelligence services focused on human activities. Lox Mar raised a crystalline hand for silence. You're saying that while we were investigating humanity, you were protecting us from actual threats? Torres nodded. Your security apparatus has some significant blind spots. We've been filling in the gaps. For how long? Demanded Counselor Mortuck. About 60 years, Torres replied casually. Ever since we realized that galactic law enforcement was focused more on bureaucratic compliance than actual security threats. She activated her device again, and the display showed a comprehensive timeline of human military operations. The scope was staggering: hundreds of interventions, threat neutralizations, and security operations conducted without any galactic authority knowing about them. The hegemony trade war of 18 years ago, Torres began, reading from the timeline. Intelligence suggested it might escalate to actual military conflict. We conducted covert operations to eliminate the weapon stockpiles that both sides were accumulating. The Threx colony uprising 12 years ago, continued another officer. We provided security and medical assistance to civilian populations while official forces were still arguing about jurisdiction. The asteroid mining disaster in the Outer Rim 6 years ago, added a third. We conducted the entire rescue operation while emergency services were still being organized. The delegates stared in stunned silence as they realized that many of the galaxy's most successful humanitarian and security operations had been conducted by forces they never knew existed. Why? Counselor Thekva asked, her voice barely audible. Tora's expression grew serious. Because someone needed to do the job, and it was clear that official channels weren't capable of handling the real threats to galactic civilization. She began walking around the chamber's perimeter, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. The Council spends its time debating territorial disputes and trade regulations, while criminal organizations develop weapons of mass destruction. You monitor newcomer species for compliance violations while terrorist groups plan attacks on civilian populations. We decided that humanity's security interests were best served by ensuring the overall stability of galactic civilization, she continued. So we've been quietly handling the problems that the official system couldn't or wouldn't address. Loxmar stood, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. You're describing a parallel military force that operates completely outside galactic law, are we? Torres asked mildly. Galactic law recognizes the right of all species to self-defense. We simply interpreted that right more broadly than most. The display shifted to show sections of galactic military law, with specific clauses highlighted. The legal text showed that species were indeed allowed to take defensive action against threats, even if those threats were in neutral space or targeting other civilizations. Article 23 of the Defense Protocols. Torres read aloud. Species may take appropriate action to neutralize threats to their security interests, including threats to allied populations and critical infrastructure. The humanitarian aid provisions of the Galactic Charter, added another officer. All species are encouraged to provide assistance during emergencies when official response is delayed or inadequate. The counter-terrorism protocols, continued a third. Species may take preemptive action against organizations that pose credible threats to civilian populations. The chamber fell into silence as delegates realized that humanity had found legal justification for conducting military operations across the galaxy without oversight or approval. The question now, Torres said, returning to the center of the chamber, is what the Council intends to do with this information. What do you mean? Loxmar asked, though his tone suggested he dreaded the answer. I mean that you now know the truth about human military capabilities and activities, Torres replied. You can either continue pretending that we're a minor species with limited defensive capabilities, or you can acknowledge the reality of our role in galactic security. And if we choose the former? Counselor Vexel asked. Torres shrugged. Then we'll continue protecting galactic civilization without official recognition, just as we have been doing for 60 years. The only difference is that you'll know we're doing it. She activated her device one fin. The Galactic Council had been in continuous session for 7 days. The crystalline chamber buzzed with constant activity as emergency committees worked around the clock to process the shocking revelations about humanity's true capabilities. Intelligence reports flowed in from across the galaxy, each one revealing new aspects of human activities that had gone completely undetected for decades. Arbiter Loxmar looked as though he had aged centuries in the past week. His crystalline form flickered erratically as he struggled to maintain composure, while the foundation of galactic governance crumbled around him. Emergency sessions had been called on hundreds of worlds as governments tried to understand what these revelations meant for the future of galactic civilization. "The comprehensive analysis is complete," announced Chief Coordinator Helvox, her energy-based form pulsing with patterns of extreme stress. "The scope of human activities extends far beyond anything we initially assessed." The main display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy that made several delegates gasp in shock. The human presence was not limited to hidden installations or secret fleets. It formed a comprehensive network that touched virtually every aspect of galactic civilization. Human operatives embedded in over 2,000 organizations across 400 star systems. Helvox announced, her voice trembling. Financial networks, research institutions, security forces, even government agencies. The infiltration is so comprehensive that we cannot determine where legitimate galactic institutions end and human influence begins. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. The idea that humanity had infiltrated galactic civilization to such an extent suggested a level of planning and coordination that defied comprehension. Counselor Thekva's insectoid form clicked rapidly. "Infiltration? Are you suggesting that humans have been conducting espionage operations for decades?" "Not espionage," corrected a calm voice. The chamber doors opened to admit a figure who walked with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to operating in the shadows. Dr. Michael Chen, director of the Human Integration Project, approached the central platform with the measured stride of a chess master making a final move. "Director Chen," Loxmar said warily, "I suppose you're here to reveal another aspect of human activities that we've failed to detect?" Chen smiled as he reached the center of the chamber. "Actually, I'm here to explain why. You've been detecting exactly what we wanted you to detect. For the past 3 centuries, he activated a sophisticated device that caused holographic displays to appear throughout the chamber. What the delegates saw was a comprehensive overview of human activities that made everything they had learned so far seem like minor footnotes. The Human Integration Project began 280 years ago, Chen announced calmly. Its mission was simple: ensure humanity's long-term survival and prosperity by becoming an integral part of galactic civilization while maintaining our independence and security. The displays showed a timeline that stretched back to humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, but instead of the simple narrative of a newcomer species gradually joining galactic society, it revealed a complex multi-generational plan of strategic integration. We realized early that species who joined galactic civilization, as obvious equals, often found themselves subjected to restrictions and oversight that limited their growth, Chen explained. So we developed an alternative approach. By pretending to be less advanced than you actually were, Counselor Vexel accused. By carefully managing perceptions while pursuing our actual objectives, Chen corrected. Everything you've discovered about our technological capabilities, our military forces, our hidden installations, these were all deliberate revelations designed to shift galactic understanding of humanity's position. The chamber fell silent as delegates began to comprehend the implications. If even these shocking revelations had been planned and orchestrated, what else did humanity have hidden? Chen gestured toward the displays, which now showed detailed breakdowns of human activities across every sector of galactic society. Our people serve in research institutions to advance scientific knowledge. They work in financial networks to ensure economic stability. They participate in security forces to protect civilian populations. And they report back to human authorities, Counselor Mortok said, his massive form trembling with anger. They coordinate with human authorities, Chen corrected, just as citizens of every species maintain loyalty to their home governments while participating in galactic society. The distinction was subtle but important. The displays showed that human operatives weren't conducting espionage in the traditional sense. They were legitimately serving in their positions, while also ensuring that human interests were protected and advanced. The difference, Chen continued, is that we've been more systematic about it than most species. We identified critical areas where human involvement could benefit both our interests and galactic civilization as a whole. The displays shifted to show specific examples. Human researchers had made breakthrough discoveries that advanced galactic science. Human financial analysts had prevented several economic collapses that would have devastated entire sectors. Human security personnel had quietly prevented dozens of conflicts that could have escalated into major wars. You're describing a conspiracy that spans centuries and involves millions of people, Loxmar said, his crystalline form glowing with alarm. I'm describing a civilization that takes long-term planning seriously, Chen replied. Everything we've done has been aimed at creating a galaxy where humanity can thrive while contributing to the prosperity and security of all species. He activated another section of his device, and the displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy. Economic indicators, security reports, scientific advancement metrics all showing steady improvement over the past 3 centuries. Galactic civilization is more stable, more prosperous, and more secure than it was when humanity joined, Chen announced. Conflicts have decreased, scientific advancement has accelerated, and economic growth has been more broadly distributed. These improvements didn't happen by accident. Counselor Thekva leaned forward in her seat. You're claiming credit for 3 centuries of galactic progress? I'm claiming partial credit, Chen corrected. Human involvement has been one factor among many, but it's been a significant factor, carefully applied where it could do the most good. The displays shifted again, showing projected scenarios of how galactic civilization might have developed without human involvement. The models were sophisticated and detailed, and they painted a disturbing picture of increased conflict, economic instability, and technological stagnation. Of course, we can't prove these counterfactual scenarios, Chen acknowledged, but our analysis suggests that galactic civilization is significantly better off with systematic human involvement than it would have been without it. The chamber erupted in angry voices as delegates grappled with the suggestion that their civilization had been improved by secret manipulation. The idea that they owed their prosperity to species they had considered primitive was difficult to accept. Loxmar raised a crystalline hand for silence. Even if we accept your analysis, you're describing a level of intervention in galactic affairs that violates every principle of species sovereignty. Chen's expression grew serious. Does it? Or does it represent a more effective approach to interspecies cooperation than the current system of bureaucratic oversight and territorial isolation? He gestured toward the ongoing displays, which now showed comparative data on conflict resolution, economic development, and scientific advancement across different regions of the galaxy. Systems with significant human involvement show measurably better outcomes across all metrics, Chen pointed out. Lower conflict rates, higher economic growth, faster technological advancement, better environmental protection. And if we had wanted your involvement, we would have asked for it, Counselor Vexil hissed. Would you? Chen asked mildly. Based on the Council's response to discovering our capabilities, it seems more likely that you would have attempted to restrict or control our activities. The uncomfortable truth of his words hung in the air. The Council's first instinct had indeed been to investigate humanity for violations of newcomer protocols, not to welcome them as potential partners. The question now, Chen continued, is what happens next. You can continue trying to govern a galaxy you never fully understood, using systems that we've proven are inadequate for addressing real challenges. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering his conclusion. Or, you can acknowledge that galactic civilization has evolved beyond the current institutional framework and work with us to build something more effective. Loxmar stood, his crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. What are you proposing? Chen smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm rather than calculating. I'm proposing that we stop pretending, that humanity stops hiding its capabilities and contributions, that the Council stops pretending it's been effectively governing galactic civilization without significant help. And then what? Counselor Mortok demanded. Then we build something better, Chen replied simply. A system that actually... The Galactic Council chamber had been transformed one final time. Gone were the ancient ceremonial banners and symbols of old authority that had decorated the space for millennia. In their place stood holographic displays showing real-time data from across the galaxy, coordination centers for ongoing operations, and communication links to hundreds of worlds where the new reality was being implemented. 3 months had passed since humanity's revelations. 3 months of heated debates, emergency sessions, and fundamental changes to how galactic civilization operated. The decision had not been easy, but it had been inevitable. The old system simply could not function once everyone knew the truth about who had really been keeping it running. Arbiter Loxmar stood before the main display, his crystalline form now glowing with renewed purpose, rather than the stress patterns that had dominated his recent weeks. Around the chamber, delegates from 300 species worked alongside human coordinators in an atmosphere of cooperative efficiency that would have been unimaginable months earlier. The transition report is complete, announced Integration Coordinator Valseth, her energy-based form pulsing with patterns of satisfaction. The new collaborative framework is operational across all major sectors of galactic civilization. The main display showed a comprehensive overview of how the galaxy now functioned. Where before there had been rigid bureaucratic hierarchies and territorial divisions, now there were flexible networks of cooperation based on demonstrated capability and expertise. Human technological assets have been integrated with galactic infrastructure, Valseth continued. Economic systems are operating at 23% higher efficiency. Security responses are 41% faster. Scientific advancement has accelerated by an average of 37% across all fields. The numbers represented more than statistical improvements. They represented lives saved, conflicts prevented, and breakthrough discoveries that would benefit every species in the galaxy. Counselor Thekva, now serving as Director of Interspecies Research Coordination, clicked her mandibles in what had become her characteristic expression of pleased surprise. The joint research initiatives alone have produced more advancement in 3 months than we saw in the previous 3 years. She gestured toward a section of the display showing collaborative projects between human and alien scientists, combining human gravitational manipulation technology with Threx pattern recognition. Capabilities has led to breakthroughs in space-time physics that neither species could have achieved alone. The Sauroch biotechnology synthesis programs are showing similar results, added Counselor Vexel, whose role now involved coordinating biological research across species lines. Human medical knowledge combined with our regenerative techniques has created treatment protocols that are revolutionizing healthcare across the galaxy. The transformation had not been without its challenges. Many species had initially resisted the idea of working so closely with humans, particularly once they understood the scope of human capabilities. Others had worried about losing their independence or cultural identity in a more integrated galactic civilization. But the results spoke for themselves. The galaxy was simply working better than it ever had before. The security integration report is equally positive, announced Admiral Torres, who now served as Director of Galactic Defense Coordination. Her uniform had changed from the light-absorbing black of covert operations to a blue that seemed to shimmer with stars, representing the unified nature of the new defense forces. Joint species security forces are operational in 47 sectors, Torres reported. Response times to emerging threats have improved dramatically, and our ability to detect problems before they become crises has expanded significantly. The display showed tactical information from across the galaxy. Where before human forces had operated in secret, now they worked openly alongside security personnel from dozens of species, each contributing their unique capabilities to the common defense. The Nexus Liberation Front was neutralized before they could complete their weapons program, Torres continued. The Korthek Piracy Syndicate has been dismantled entirely. The Zephyrian separatist movement has been transformed into a legitimate political organization through diplomatic intervention. These successes represented more than effective law enforcement. They demonstrated that the new cooperative approach could solve problems that the old system had been unable to even detect. Dr. Chen entered the chamber, but his role had changed as well. No longer the shadowy director of secret integration projects, he now served as coordinator of long-term strategic planning, working openly with representatives from every major species to guide galactic civilization's development. The 10-year projection models are complete, Chen announced as he approached the central platform. If current trends continue, we're looking at unprecedented levels of prosperity, security, and scientific advancement across all sectors of galactic civilization. The projections that appeared on the display were remarkable. Economic growth that benefited every species, technological advancement that solved long-standing problems, and security improvements that would make large-scale conflicts virtually impossible. But perhaps more importantly, Chen continued, we're seeing the emergence of a truly collaborative galactic culture. Species that had minimal contact for centuries are now working together on joint projects. Barriers that seemed insurmountable are being overcome through shared expertise and mutual support. Loxmar stepped forward, his crystalline form now serving not as supreme arbiter, but as coordinator of the new collaborative council structure. Dr. Chen, what do the long-term models suggest about humanity's role in this new framework? Chen smiled, and his expression carried genuine warmth rather than the calculating precision that had characterized his earlier presentations. The model suggests that humanity's role will continue to evolve as other species develop their own capabilities and take on greater responsibilities. He gestured toward the display, which showed projections extending far into the future. We estimate that within 50 years, human capabilities will represent perhaps 20% of total galactic resources, rather than the disproportionate percentage they currently represent. Other species are rapidly developing their own advanced technologies and strategic thinking capabilities. And you're comfortable with that reduced influence? Asked Counselor Mortak, whose species was already showing remarkable progress in developing new technologies based on human innovations. We're not interested in permanent dominance, Chen replied. We're interested in permanent prosperity and security for galactic civilization as a whole. If that means other species eventually surpass human capabilities in various areas, we consider that a success, not a failure. The philosophy represented a fundamental shift from the competitive dynamics that had characterized galactic politics for millennia. Instead of species competing for dominance or resources, the new framework encouraged each civilization to contribute its best capabilities for mutual benefit. The question now, Chen continued, is whether this collaborative approach can be sustained over the long term. History suggests that cooperative frameworks often break down when they're tested by serious challenges. What kind of challenges? Loxmar asked. Chen's expression grew serious. External threats that we haven't yet encountered. Resource scarcity that forces difficult choices. Internal conflicts between species with fundamentally different values or objectives. The display shifted to show potential scenarios that could test the new galactic framework. Some involved encounters with hostile alien civilizations from beyond the galaxy. Others dealt with resource depletion or environmental catastrophes that could strain interspecies cooperation. The difference, Torres interjected, is that we're now prepared to face those challenges together, rather than as competing factions. The combined capabilities of all galactic species working in coordination can address problems that would have overwhelmed any individual civilization. And we've proven that such coordination is possible, added Valseth. The past 3 months have demonstrated that species can work together effectively when they focus on shared objectives, rather than territorial or hierarchical concerns. Chen nodded. That's the real achievement here. Not the technological advances or the improved efficiency metrics, but the proof that galactic civilization can evolve beyond its limitations. He activated his device one final time, and the display showed a comprehensive view of the galaxy as it now operated. Instead of isolated species managing their own territories with minimal interaction, it showed a vibrant network of cooperation and mutual support that touched every inhabited system. 3 months ago, humanity revealed that we had never needed permission to pursue our objectives, Chen said. Today we've proven that no species needs permission to contribute to the common good of galactic civilization. Loxmar stood, his crystalline form now glowing with confident purpose. The old era of territorial isolation and bureaucratic hierarchy is officially ended. The new era of collaborative governance and shared prosperity has begun. Cheers erupted throughout the chamber, as delegates from hundreds of species celebrated not the dominance of any single civili,